Welcome to our weekly meditation and mindfulness class. Let's start today with a meditation. So let's find a comfortable seat. And we can close our eyes, settle into our seat, feel our connection to the earth through our legs. Feel our hips aligning over our legs. And feel our torso stacked above the hips. Let's roll our shoulders up to our ears and down and back, keeping them soft and relaxed while we sit. You can align the neck above the shoulders and slightly tuck the chin. Reach the crown of the head up to the sky. And let's start today with a breathing exercise. So we'll do Samavriti, equal inhales and equal exhales to the count of 5. So let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue that pattern on your own for 3 more breaths. Now, if you have music, you want to use music, you can hit play now. And otherwise, we'll just continue to sit for a few more minutes. You can continue with that breathing technique, or you can just sit in stillness. And when you're feeling ready, you can start to deepen your inhale. Start to bring awareness back into the body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, rejoin us. I wonder if Helen can't hear us.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I want to stay like that the whole time.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Great. So before I start talking, are there any questions about anything? So Cindy, I can't remember if we talked about this. Do you have your own regular meditation practice?
Truthfully, what's been really interesting for me, Matt, is that my meditation has gotten better and my yoga is not as good.
Oh, yeah.
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 Like I found a great relief in, a half hour of meditation, and it's remarkable.
Great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, and these days it can be harder to get into yoga without the community. I mean, without practicing, just only practicing on our own, it can be tough to get into it. So I hear your
Yeah.
struggles.
Yeah. But and then the flip side of it is like, knowing full well that having a meditation practice is equally as good. And then all of our stuff, and I've, it's amazing. It's really interesting. Just learning how to sit down with yourself is a tough lesson.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and that's been one benefit of the social distancing for me, just kind of forcing myself to sit with myself and examine myself. And so, yeah. Great. Well, so the first topic I wanted to talk about tonight is the idea that life doesn't have to be so serious. And this is largely influenced by Alan Watts. So this is something he talks about sometimes. And the basic idea is that, well, we should start off with some semantics. So when I say serious in this sense, the way I define serious is that something's serious when there's a tragic outcome possible. So, we take things seriously when there's something tragic that we're trying to avoid happening. Um, and so life doesn't have to be quite so serious if we adopt more of an Eastern worldview rather than the traditional kind of Western worldview. So I talked about this last week in the some of the differences between Eastern and Western worldviews. Here in the West, we tend to be very serious about most things, and a lot of that is influenced by our religions. So especially Christianity is a very serious religion. There's very clear-cut good and evil, and if you're a good person, you go to hell for the rest of eternity, and if you're a bad person, if you're a good person, you go to heaven for the rest of eternity. If you're a bad person, you go to hell, and your immortal soul spends the rest of eternity in hell. So that's very, very serious. But in contrast, the Eastern religions don't have anything so serious. So I talked before about the Hindu worldview, where the world is essentially a big drama or a big play, and we're all actors played by God. So we're all the universal consciousness incorporating into these physical bodies, and the main goal of existence is just to have experiences, of separateness, so that we can know the experience of oneness. So it's much less serious than Christianity. There's no good and evil. There's no hell or heaven. It's all more just about experience. And similarly, the Taoist worldview views life more as just one big organism that's continuously growing and evolving, and the world and the universe just kind of spontaneously grew out of itself, and we grew out of the world, and life in our lives, it's all just the world growing and evolving. So again, there's no right and wrong, there's no heaven and hell. And so with these less serious worldviews, it's much easier to adopt a much more relaxed view of life, not get so worked up about things. And it's much easier to take a deep breath and step back and respond to life rather than react to life. Because especially, so I want to continue with this Taoist worldview. When we believe that the world is just growing and evolving naturally, along with that idea is that nothing wrong really happens, that everything happens in the only way that it can, given the preceding circumstances and factors that led up to that moment. And so things work out the only way they can. And this is different than things working out the way they're supposed to, because so it's not, when you use that word supposed to, that implies things like predetermination and foreordained, and that we don't have free will, we can't influence the world. And the Taoist worldview is not like that at all. I mean, not like some other worldviews where everything's part of God's plan and things are set and we don't have free will. But in this Taoist worldview, it's just everything works out the only way that it can, given everything that happened before it. And so that doesn't mean we can't influence our lives or we can't influence the world. We can certainly try, and we can sometimes successfully, and we can change the course of our lives. We can change the course of the world. But if we fail to achieve the particular outcome that we're aiming for, that's still okay. It's not wrong. It's not bad. We're not going to go to hell because we didn't do something right. And so this just allows for a much more relaxed view of life compared to what we see in the world today. And so it's kind of like a garden. You know, if you think of planting a garden, too bad Gina's not here to comment on it. But you know, you can plant seeds. You can plant yams and beets and lettuce and kale, or whatever you like to plant, and you can water the garden and weed it and add fertilizer or use goats to naturally fertilize it. But sometimes, no matter what you do, you're not going to grow the crops that you want, or the crops aren't going to grow as well as you hope they would. Maybe there's not enough rain, or maybe there's something wrong with the soil. Maybe there's limestone decomposing in the soil and it's increasing the acidity, and it's not ideal. So there can be factors from previous circumstances that are still working themselves out that prevent us from achieving the outcome that we want to achieve. And that's okay, because that's just the way it has to unfold given what we've seen. And so we can still be sincere about things. That's doesn't mean we don't take anything seriously. It doesn't mean we can't put effort, or there's no use in putting effort in things. We can still be very sincere. And I'm very sincere about what I'm doing here right now. But it's not as serious. It's not, there's not so much pressure to get things right, because there's no right and no wrong. Everything just works out exactly the way it has to. And so are there any questions on that idea?
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is probably no surprise to you guys. But I feel like so much of the world right now is very serious, especially politics and the news. And it's, kind of since the 4th century AD, when the Romans took over Christianity, politicians have been trying to convince us that things are serious since then. And I think it's just been a continuous succession since then of people trying to convince us that things are serious so that we'll follow them and do what they tell us to do. Because when leaders make things very serious, then that makes us believe that we need to do what they're telling us. Otherwise, tragic things are going to happen. And so, yeah, that's just, I think, important to keep in mind that there are, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there are, people out there that want things to be very serious because it benefits them materially, especially the news and political pundits.
Well, and kind of like what you're saying, Matt, is that what I see lots of times is it's a way of putting people in a position of fear, and then they become, trapped in like the need to, like, they need help because they're afraid of things. And it's like, well, the outcome, maybe it's that, or maybe the outcome is something else. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. All this seriousness, it creates fear for us, and that fear, a lot of this fear is created specifically to control people. And
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think there's one deep state or anything controlling everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's not one force in the world trying to control us, but it's just lots of competing factors and factions out there, and governments and political parties and corporations. Everyone's trying to influence everyone else, and so it's just important. But yeah, I really feel like by adopting these other worldviews, it can help us just kind of relax and not be so scared, not so worked up about what's going on in the world. But at the same time, this isn't a call to just be completely apathetic about the world. Like I said, we can and we should try to make our lives better and make the world better. But we should also be okay if we can't. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess kind of preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, Matt, it's ironic that the people that really need to hear this message don't hear this message. They don't know where to go to even hear something like this. So that's the irony of the whole thing, right? Like Cindy and I totally agree with you. And so much of the world does live in fear. In fact, the news tells you that you should be fearful today. So unfortunately, we have more newscast people that are out there taking the place of preachers, if you will. Right? They're preaching their agenda, because it's just like you said, they are preaching a message because they want to persuade you to their point of view. And most people are hearing that and not hearing what you just said. So that's the problem that we are faced with,
Yeah, well, that's why I record these and put them on the internet, hoping that in the future, someone who needs to hear it will hear it.
Yeah, someone who is seeking and lands on it will discover it. So
yeah, that's my hope.
That's why I keep supporting you every week. I want you to keep doing this.
Great, thank you.
Well, and it's really interesting, just because I know you both. I mean, one of the things that I was reading the other day, and they were saying this, a little article I read, they said, the sort of keep it simple thing. And it's like, that's the part about like that, the way in which you use meditation really as a tool to like relax and let go and be relaxed, rather than being all wound up all the time. And they were saying, oh, it's three little simple things. And it's, first thing they said was like, go outside. And the second thing they said was, which I think is the key to like what we're talking about, is really notice the messaging, notice your messaging. What are you telling yourself? Like, oh my gosh, I'm always afraid, or gosh, it seems like it's going to turn out okay. And then the third thing she said was to eat something green every day. But I've really been paying attention to that piece about what's your messaging. And what I've really noticed is a lot of people are saying some really funky stuff to themselves, and it's like, wow. You don't want to get into that, like you say, that preachy thing, but you were like, wow, I'm so glad that the messages I give myself are positive and they enhance my experience rather than like falling back into that fear thing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this fear is kind of ingrained in our culture, in our society. I mean, we're brought up with this from a very young age, and if we're not, like us, fortunate enough to fall into yoga or meditation that tells us a different way, I mean, most people just don't know that there's an alternative story to tell themselves.
Yeah, agreed, totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Matt, last week, remember I said that I feel fortunate that my mother was Buddhist. And so when I grew up, it wasn't like you're going to go to hell. when I was growing up, my mother was teaching, what Buddha teaches, right? Except that I didn't know it was Buddhism. But she would just say things like, always do your best and never tell a lie. She was just very simple little things like that. But there was never like a punitive consequence, right? It was always uplifting, and it was always, do the right thing. And it was a positive, right? It's sort of like what Nick was teaching us in training. You don't tell your students, don't put your leg out this way. Instead, you say, put your leg, extend your leg, as opposed to don't put your leg in some position, right?
Right.
So I feel fortunate that I grew up with, a mother teaching me something that was always more positive than negative.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, I think is really interesting is it's super simple. Like the way things get weird and convoluted is when the explanation is long and detailed, because then you think like, oh, I don't know it. But really, lots of those messages are really simple.
Right. Exactly, Cindy. I agree. Yeah. And sometimes people make it complicated because they're trying to make it like only they have the answer.
Exactly.
And it's a complicated one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Well, it looks like we have the same yoga teacher training. We're agreeing with everything that everybody's saying.
I know. Well, at least we're all still into like learning things and, and pushing it around and, being good people. People.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's meditate again. If you want to use music, you can get that ready. So let's find our comfortable seat. Settle into our seat. Close our eyes. And for this meditation, let's visualize that there's a glowing ball of white light in the middle of our head. And just visualize that and hold your attention on that. And then maybe, if you want, you can visualize as you inhale, the ball expands, and as you exhale, it contracts slightly. So let's try to focus on that visualization for the next few minutes. If you'd like to use music, you can hit play now, and we'll come back in a few minutes. Slowly deepen your inhale, coming back into the body. So how was that technique? How did you like that? Any thoughts, comments?
It's nice. It's good to have a visualization sometimes.
Yeah. I like to give lots of options. Just sometimes it helps just to have something to keep the mind a little bit occupied, because sometimes it's tough to be totally still. Great.
So I went for a walk with a friend today, and we were talking about meditation. She's like, "Oh, I can't do it because I start going, and then I start telling myself, oh God, your hands aren't in the right place, and your back is not straight enough." And I said, okay, so that is self-criticism, and that isn't really meditation. So that's the thing, about having something else to focus on, like you're saying, the golden light or whatever it is. I said, self-criticism it's not really a form of meditation. It's just before you get to meditation, before you quiet down, you do all that stuff. And we both laughed about it. But she said, I can't do it. I'm like, no, you'll do it. You just have to stay with it.
Yeah, very true. And very common. And it's especially, I don't know, maybe she's been taught in ways that you have to do things exactly. Your hands have to be in a specific position. You have to be sitting in a specific position and doing a particular thing. And
well, can I add this, Cindy, for your friend? I think that would have been a perfect opportunity to invite her to Matt's meditation. Well, no, because I remember too, when I would be the one saying that I can't meditate. I mean, maybe you guys did when you first tried, but that's what I used to say in the beginning. And I would have to say that after yoga teacher training, and then with Matt, you're doing it every single week. And then I practice, almost every day when I can. I'm really building up my meditation practice. And I don't say that anymore because I do know what I need to do. So this friend of Cindy's doesn't know what to do. And unless someone teaches her what to do, she's going to be stuck in the same self-criticism.
Yeah. Well, I think she's open to it. I mean, she's gone through a lot of stuff in the last year. So even just having the chat about it is pretty big, I think, for her.
Yeah. And that she's tried it to the point where she knows she can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to someone who's never tried it.
Yeah.
But tell her about Matt, because I think this would be very helpful for someone to discover a teacher guiding you. And I think Matt's way of teaching is really, really lovely for someone that is embarking on trying it out.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Helen.
I really mean that. Yeah.
And that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing to hear you say that. So, thank you.
You are doing the right thing. Well, you are not doing the right thing. You are being the right person.
Oh.
You are being Matthew.
Great. Yeah, that's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah, because there's lots of meditation teachers out there, and they're going to resonate with different people, and because they have different styles and all of that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can send her to the Abbey of the Redwoods website. So I've got a bunch of meditation videos there. I've got a whole section for meditation basics, like how to create your own practice.
Okay.
Like an a very simple, easily accessible introduction. So yeah, if you want to point her to the website.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, I can.
Or Cindy, invite her for next week if if you're able to join. I think that'd be nice to invite her, because if we all believe in this is good for us, then you're really doing something good for your friend, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, she's definitely deserving, and she's trying. She's trying.
Yeah. Great.
Matt, are you having fun doing this?
Yes, I am.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. It feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Doesn't feel like work. It's never a drag or anything.
Yeah, you can see it on your face.
Yeah.
You look very happy and content.
Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Mhm. Great. So there was one other topic I wanted to talk about tonight, and it kind of comes out of, or it's related to what we were talking about earlier. And this is the idea of saving what we love versus fighting what we hate. And this actually came
Oh,
from,
that's a good one.
yeah, this actually came from a Star Wars movie. I think it's the most recent one that came out, the Last Jedi, I think. Right at the end, or close to the end, there's this scene where one of the characters, Finn, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but he's the First Order is storming the rebel base and they're about to destroy it. And there's this big battering ram cannon that's going to blow up the main wall. And so Finn, things are really desperate. He's going to try to save everyone by going kamikaze and destroying the battering ram cannon and ramming his speeder into it. So he's on his collision course and he's made his peace with dying. But then another character, Rose, rams into him and knocks him out of the way and prevents him from killing himself. And afterwards he's like, "What are you doing? Why'd you do that?" And she said the line. She's like, "This is how we win, by saving what we love, not fighting what we hate." I think that's a really good message and a really interesting way to think about things. Because when we save what we love, then we're focused on love and we see more love all around us and we bring more love into the world. But when we're fighting what we hate, then we're just focused on hate. And all we see everywhere we look is more hate. And we just wind up bringing more hate into the world. And so sometimes we might need to fight in order to save what we love. I mean, sometimes it comes down to even physical violence, or things can get desperate, and we may need to fight in order to save what we love. But when our focus is on saving what we love, once it's saved, then we can stop fighting. Whereas if we're focused on fighting what we hate, we can't stop fighting until what we hate is destroyed or who we hate is destroyed. And so you can see there's very different outcomes there.
That was at the end of the Star Wars movie.
Yeah, close to the
The
end.
very end. Do you remember the name of the movie, the actual Star Wars movie?
So I think it's the last one that came out. I think it's called the Last Jedi.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because what you just said, I agree with that, because does anybody follow Abraham Hicks?
I haven't heard of
Abraham Hicks. So it's a spiritual message I get each day from Abraham. And Abraham is a voice, a spiritual voice that speaks through Esther Hicks.
Oh, I've heard of her. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she always talks about that we have so much. Well, I shouldn't just see, because it's Abraham speaking through her. So Abraham talks about that in the United States. We have so much fighting going on, right? Because what you just said is so perfect. We actually, if you read all the headlines of the news and the newspapers of late, and when I say of late, maybe even last 10 years, we fight what we hate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're always fighting, and we're fighting the enemies. We're fighting what we hate, as opposed to focusing on what it is that we love and taking care and saving what we love. We're fighting all the time. So Abraham's message was exactly what you just said, that we have so much negative things going on in our world, and we wonder why sometimes, because that's what we choose to focus on, right? And then that very common saying, you will get what you focus on.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And like you said, especially politics in this country, the last many years or the last several years have become so focused on just fighting the other side. I mean, how many times, how many elections
Yeah.
Are we voting against the other candidate instead of voting for the one we like? And this happens on both sides of the spectrum. I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. That I mean, so often everyone is just voting against the other side instead of voting for what they want. And I think there's a even, well, my mom keeps telling me this example from the Obama administration. At one point, some Republicans got together and proposed a bill and submitted it to the Senate or whatever. And the Obama administration looked at the bill and decided that it was a good thing they liked it. It was a good bill. And so the Obama administration supported the bill, and then the Republicans withdrew their support from their own bill because the administration supported it. No, I don't, my mom can't remember the name of which bill it was exactly. And this is hearsay from my mom. So who knows what the exact details are. But I mean, I'm sure this has happened on both sides, going both ways. And I want to make it clear. I don't think either political party is that great. I mean, I support Democrats a little bit more than Republicans, but I think the whole system is so corrupt. And
Yeah.
but
I agree.
so but there's this idea that they would remove their support for their own bill just because the other side supporting it. I think that capulates her. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. That and so they wind up fighting against what they wanted to do in the first place, right? Is it's so unproductive to adopt this mindset of focusing on fighting against what we hate. And because when we do this, we tend to really demonize the other side and dehumanize the other side. And then it makes it impossible to work with the other side when we're so focused on what we hate. Whereas if we're focused on what we love, what we want to see happen, then maybe we can work with people on the other side towards this common goal. Because we all just want to be happy when it comes down to the end. I mean, we all want ourselves to be happy. We all want to be able to provide for our families. We all want the country to do well, but we're so caught up in fighting against the other side that we can't work with the other side, even though it's half the country. I mean, we're almost perfectly split between conservative and liberal, Democrat and Republican. So it's not like I don't understand how anyone thinks we can defeat the other side, or I don't know what the idea is. You want to just get rid of all those people that don't agree with what we believe. And so, yeah, I mean, we just need to figure out how we can work with the other side in order to bring about positive change instead of just fighting what the other side's doing all the time. So, yeah, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir some more.
I do think, like you're saying, though, Matt, the interesting thing is, I think from a really young age, we have been taught to sort of position up, and that usually puts people on one side or the other. And the thing that's so interesting, like you're saying, it's like, well, I'm right and you're wrong. Well, maybe there's some of each. And like I said, this little thing that I did last night, this phone call I did last night, it was really weird because it sort of put everybody in that position. You were like against the one guy, and the other person, we were for her. And it's like, oh gosh, I mean, it wasn't a very good outcome. I didn't think, I didn't stay on the phone call till the end because it was just got so brutal for me. I was like, whoa, this is, the whole setup was really negative. It wasn't like, let's find some common ground or let's protect this beautiful place. It's like the guy wants to put in an asphalt batch plant and he's going to make a lot of money. Well, of course he's going to do anything he can do to make this thing happen, and we're going to do anything we can do to fight him. And it's like, this is not good. This is not good.
Right.
So, it's just interesting because, again, I think we've been trained to kind of like choose a side and get over there and shoot poison arrows at each other. Kind of weird.
Yeah, well, and like I was saying, this idea of struggle and fighting against the bad guys, it's so ingrained in our culture that, I mean, we learn that it seeps into our brain in that stage of development where we don't even realize we're developing our worldview, right? It's just foundational to our understanding of the world when we're raised in this environment. And yeah, it's really difficult to imagine a different way of being, a different way of relating to others. But it kind of feels like things are changing, though. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people talking about stuff like this, and there's a lot of people interested in stuff like this. And I feel like if there's one thing everyone has in common right now, it's that, or most of us are just tired of the fighting, right? And tired of
Yeah.
all the negativity. And I think a lot of people on both sides are just tired of the fighting. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of looking around wondering, well, maybe there's a different way we can go about doing this. And so I have hope for the future that maybe slowly we can get there. Well, and I also, going back to that Taoist worldview of everything evolving, I feel like all of this drama, all this negative, all this fighting is all part of our evolution as a species. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were highly evolved apes living on the savannah, throwing feces at each other. So, I mean, that was only like few tens of thousands of years ago. So, and we've come a long way in a relatively, compared to how long the Earth's been around, we've come a long way in a really short time. And so, hopefully, this is just part of the growth process. I kind of feel like humanity right now is in our like teenage years, just throwing a fit, rebelling against everything, fighting against everything. And so hopefully we're about to mature into something different. But who knows? But whatever happens, that's what has to happen. And so all we can do is keep trying to spread messages like this, trying to encourage people to think things in a different way or look at things differently. So, yeah. All right, so let's do one more meditation. So yeah, if you want to use music, you can get that ready. So let's settle into our seat, close our eyes, get comfortable. And for this last meditation, let's focus on our hearts. And so similar to in the visualization in the head, just imagine there's a big ball of colored light in your heart. Maybe it's green, like the color of the heart chakra, or maybe it's red or blue, whatever color feels right for you, for your heart. So just imagine that there's this big ball of light right in your center, right in your chest. And as you inhale, it expands, filling up your body, filling up around you. And as you exhale, it contracts. And then just keeps expanding and contracting. So if you'd like to use music, you can hit play now. We'll be back in a few minutes. Once again, deepening your inhale, returning your awareness to the physical body. So that's it for today. Any final questions or comments about anything?
Thank you.
Oh,
Nice
thank
to
you.
see Cindy joining.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Cindy.
And thank you, Matthew.
Oh,
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Helen. It's really nice to see both of you.
yeah, it's great. All right, have a good night.
Good night.
Bless you both.
Mhm.